Hello everyone, welcome to Deep Dive on Herald Global. I am Saimik Sen. On the occasion of World Diabetes Day, joining us today Dr. PG Talwalkar, Senior Diabetologist at SL Raheja Fortis Hospital. First of all, thank you so much for taking out this time for us. Welcome to Herald Global.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Okay, on the occasion of World Diabetes Day, I would like to begin by asking you, why every second Indian is suffering from this condition? Is it primarily because of an unhealthy lifestyle, or it is purely genetic?
I will give a full justice to your question by saying that every second Indian, fortunately, is not a diabetic. About every 10th adult Indian is diabetic.
Okay.
We have 140 million Indians, and we have 140 crore diabetics and 74 million diabetics out of 140 crores. And if you calculate the adults, because diabetes is very rare in children, so above the age of 20, there are 74 million, 7.4 crores becomes about 1 in 10. So
Sure.
Every 1 in 10 is diabetic. In the urban areas of India, it is 1 in 7 or 1 in 8. And in rural areas of India, it is 1 in 14. Now, why diabetes is very common in our country? The answers are as follows. Number one, we have a strong genetic background. Our genetic background to get diabetes is a little bit stronger than Westerners or Caucasians. That's number one. And number two, we are rapidly urbanizing, industrializing, westernizing, Coca-Colaizing, and we are changing our food habits, we are changing our living habits, our lifestyle has changed upside down. What we used to eat 20, 30 years back, we don't eat. We go to restaurants, we indulge in fast food, and all those environmental factors interplaying with our genetic background has created this problem to create a nation with the world's second highest population of diabetes.
True.
Now, if you have to give the examples, these genes are like seeds and the environmental factors are like fertilizers. So you have already got seeds on the ground, and you have spread good amount of fertilizers. Or genes are like bullets, and the gun trigger is like environmental factors. You have bullet, and now you pull the trigger. We are number 2 in the world. Number 1 is China, and probably we are going faster than China. So maybe after 10, 15, 20 years, we might be diabetes capital of the world.
Okay.
At present, 1 in 10 adults in India is diabetic.
So, what should be the ideal level of blood sugar, according to you?
Just before answering your question, I'll give you a quotation of a famous epidemiologist who is exclusively working in the field of diabetes.
Sure.
He says, westernization, urbanization, industrialization, and Coca-Colaization has ruined the civilization. That is what is happening. And he uses the term Coca-Colaization for conversion from a conventional, complex, cereal-based food into fast food. The second question was, what should be the ideal blood sugar? Now, again, this has two answers. The ideal blood sugar for a non-diabetic should be a normal blood sugar. Within a second, I will define what is a normal blood sugar.
Sure.
And ideal blood sugar for a non-diabetic should be a little higher than normal, because in spite of all the development in the field of science and technology and pharmaceuticals and medicines, the drugs which are available today are not perfect. So that if we try to reach the ideal level with the currently available drugs, we might produce very low sugar reactions. And that can be very dangerous in elderly diabetics, diabetics with heart disease, which is very common, and so on and so forth.
True.
So ideal sugar in a normal person should be what is considered as a normal sugar. That means in a fasting state, it should be less than 100. And in a postprandial state, 2 hours after meals, it should be less than 140. But to define diabetes, as per the current definition, the fasting blood sugar should be above 100, or postprandial blood sugar. Everybody will eat differently, different kind of food, different amounts. So after giving 75 grams of sugar, 2 hours after eating 75 grams of dextrose, if the sugar is more than 200, he is a pakka diabetic. If it is between 140 to 199, he is a borderline diabetic. The medical terminology for borderline diabetes is pre-diabetes. And if it is less than 140, he is a normal person. Now, other way of defining diabetes is calculate hemoglobin A1C, which is a measure of a long-term control of blood glucose. In a normal person, it is less than 5.7, non-diabetic. If it is above 6.5, he is diabetic. If it is between 5.7 to 6.49, he is a borderline diabetic, which we call pre-diabetic. Now, if your question is what should be an ideal sugar or ideal HbA1c in a diabetic person, then I will say it has to be very much individualized. If I have a pregnant diabetic young girl sitting in front of me, I would say it would be HbA1c should be less than 6, fasting blood sugar should be less than 95, and postprandial blood sugar should be less than 125. If a man of 75 with heart disease, paralysis, bedridden, nuclear family, no help is coming and seeing me, I would say you keep your postprandial around 200, fasting around 130, 40, and HbA1c around 7.5 to 8. If he's a middle-aged man, I would say HbA1c 7. So the ideal sugar for a known diabetic will depend on his life expectancy, his comorbidities, that means whether he has a heart disease, whether he has a kidney disease, how smart is his brain, how functional is his brain, that is important question in elderly persons, how much help is available at home, and all that will be calculated to define or to set a target for him. But if he's a normal person, fasting should be less than 100, postprandial should be less than 140, as less as possible.
Okay. So what are the natural ways to prevent this condition? Can you suggest some, if there are any?
Yeah, of course. Natural ways are very, very important. Lifestyle modifications. Mild diabetes can be controlled only with lifestyle modifications. Lifestyle modifications are of two types: proper diet and proper exercise. Proper exercise means at least 30 to 40-minute walk at a reasonably good pace for 5 to 7 days a week. 150 minutes of walk, that's a minimal requirement.
Sure.
And a diet which should consist of a complex carbohydrates, whole cereal, the foodstuffs made from whole cereals, like chapati from whole wheat, not naan, like vegetables, lot of vegetables with fibers, and so about 20% of the calories coming from fat and remaining from proteins. And the food should be taken in small, frequent meals. Not heavy food should not be taken at one time. Even if a diabetic person is overweight, say suppose a young man of 45 who has a diabetes for 2 or 3 years comes to me, his weight is say 95 kgs. I would say you reduce 15 kgs, you will not require any drug for diabetes, any drug for blood pressure, any drug for cholesterol, as long as you keep that 15 kg off your body. The moment you build up again, you will get diabetes back, you will require a treatment for it.
Okay.
Reduction of weight is a little bit easier as compared to maintenance of reduced weight.
Okay. So what are the symptoms, signs, and cause? Let's start with the red flags. If somebody needs to figure out that he's entering that zone, he or she.
Say, basically, we will restrict our discussion to type 2 diabetes. 95 to 96% of Indian diabetics belong to type 2. Now, this is a slowly progressive disease, and it can remain silent up to 5 years from the day diabetes starts in a person's body.
Okay.
It can remain silent up to 5 years, absolutely no symptoms. That's why we call it a chupa Rustam, because during the stage when it is silent, it is doing all the damage inside quite. So that's why some patients already have a blood pressure when they come to see you on day 1 of diabetes. The others have some eye problem, they come to you on the day 1 of diabetes. You thoroughly examine their heart, and in 30-40% of them, you will find at least some minor evidence of heart disease here and there, if not a florid heart disease on day 1, because their diabetes is diagnosed today, but it started 5 years back. How, in some patients, what happens nowadays, those who are working in urban areas and working in corporates, they have those corporate health programs every 1 year or 2 years. They compulsorily do the health checkup, in which blood sugar is always included. So some of them, when they are apparently absolutely healthy, are caught in this filter. The others go for policy, new policy, extra policy, and LIC will ask them to do the test and they will be caught in that. Some will have some skin problems, some itching and irritation, whichever doctor you go to. If you have a symptom, that doctor, whether he's a dermatologist, a surgeon, or a gynecologist, will ask at least one blood sugar. Itching के लिए dermatologist के पास गया, blood sugar, diabetes. Some of them might go for a minor surgical problem, say hernia here, a post-operative wound there, post-traumatic wound there. A surgeon will not touch him before doing blood sugar. Touch him means surgically touch him.
Sure.
Diabetes is diagnosed. If there are no filters like this, then gradually he starts losing weight, he starts having excessive thirst, he starts passing excessive urination. Then there is some accumulation of a whitish discharge on a private part in a male and itching over the private part in a woman. And the boils all over the skin, the itching all over the skin, weakness, tiredness, all those things come. But the message I want to give you here is through you to everybody, please do not wait for these symptoms because by that time it's too late. In India, everybody once he crosses 30, no matter how externally he is feeling healthy, he must do blood sugar. If it is normal, repeat every 2 years. If it is borderline, repeat more frequently, say depending upon whether it's just crossing the normal or coming nearer to diabetes, repeat after 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, using your common sense. If your parents are diabetic, if you are extremely overweight, you are already having blood pressure at 27, don't theoretically wait till 30. Do blood sugar at 27. Because in our country, diabetes comes about 15 years earlier than the West. The message, another important message here is, see, there are certain complications of diabetes. Like classical complications of diabetes are eye complications and kidney complications.
Okay.
They will start developing only after one becomes pakka diabetic. That means fasting is above 126 and postprandial is above 200. But unfortunately, the complications which are not very specific for diabetes, but which are 4 times more common in diabetics than non-diabetics, such as heart disease, blood pressure, they start developing. The clock for them starts ticking when one crosses the normal and enters the pre-diabetic stage. That means fasting around 150, postprandial around 155. So if a person of 30, if a fasting is 115, postprandial is 155, I will not take him lightly. He is already a pre-diabetic. He is still protected from kidney complications and eye complications, but he is exposed to several times higher heart and blood pressure complication at that stage.
Sure.
And another most important message, the best results for diabetes treatment are obtained. You control blood sugar soon after the patient becomes diabetes with aggressive measures. He will not get all these vascular heart complications. He will be protected in future, even when his blood sugar is not very good, and that happens because as the diabetes being progressive, it becomes more and more difficult as it progresses. You take example of a man A who spotted diabetes, who diagnosed diabetes because he went to a doctor to do the test when he had no symptoms, blood sugar was little high, he controlled it. He protected him, he controlled diabetes for 5 years, but unfortunately after 15 years, he lost the control. But he will still have some degree of protection from the heart.
Sure.
As against a man who waited for the symptoms to develop and thus was in a untreated diabetic range for 4-5 years. He catches it, he is very aggressive from day one, he goes after the control and gets it under control within few weeks. But he will not be equally protected from the heart disease in future because the damage is already done. So again, what is the take-home message? Pick it as early as possible. Don't wait for symptoms. And more important take-home message is start treating it as early as possible. Be aggressive. In a younger person, the chances of low sugar are less. His kidneys are normal. His perceptions are strong. His reflexes are very quick. So that you aggressively treat him. You can't treat aggressively in the old age.
Okay. So how important is diet control for a diabetic patient? And what ideally should be consumed by a patient? What do you suggest?
Diet control is one of the four pillars of management of diabetes.
Sure.
And all the pillars have equal importance. Diet is one, exercise is another, medication is one, and acquiring knowledge, getting educated about diabetes, knowing the latest thing about diabetes and implementing it for your own well-being is the fourth. So diet is very important. You see, to give you an example, diet is like a fielding in cricket. You know, everybody goes after Tendulkar and how many runs he scored, but we didn't win matches during his time because our fielding was weak or bowling was weak. Now we are athletes, they run fast, they really are energetic, they score runs, they don't allow somebody to steal the runs and we are winning because their fielding is tight. Initially only batting, now fielding, bowling. So similarly, everybody goes with the idea that diabetes means drug treatment. Let doctor give good drugs, I will take it, I will comply 100%, but then don't ask me for a diet. That man will not succeed. Diet is as important as drug. So that's the first thing. What are the four basic pillars? What you should do in diet, you should take only those many calories which you need for your daily activities, which means if somebody is overweight, he should eat less as compared to what he requires actually, so that the extra calories stored inside his abdomen will be removed.
Okay.
That's how he will lose the weight. Somebody is very thin and lean, he should take extra calories. So that is about the calories depending upon kind of work, depending upon your physical activity you decide. The second thing is avoid all simple sugars because they are converted into glucose very swiftly and suddenly they give rise to a peak in blood sugar. Okay. So all sweets containing sucrose, that is table sugar or any other sugar, should be avoided. You can take complex carbohydrates like preparations made from the whole wheat, nachni, bajri, jwari, because these complex carbohydrates, even though weight by weight, they will contain the same amount of sugar. Conversion of complex carbohydrates into sugar takes time. It requires digestion. As it takes time, it will be released to the circulation slowly over a period of time. So the peak would be avoided. So don't take naan, take whole wheat chapati. Don't take any sweet substances which contain sugar. That's number one. Take high fiber diet. That means whole wheat, no naan, no maida products, lot of vegetables, lot of salads. Reduce your fat or oil intake to 3 to 4 teaspoonfuls. Okay. Reduce red meat. You can take meat, you can take proteins through the fish, proteins through the chicken, but avoid or reduce red meat. Spread your food intake throughout the day. So these are some of the diet principles.
Okay. So why is fasting not permitted for a diabetic patient?
Because he is on medications. The medications are acting. You don't have remote control for medications. You don't say, Baba, drug, you stop action because I'm fasting. Once you take the drug, your control is gone. It will work till it is there in the body. So then blood sugar will suddenly dip down. And what are the symptoms of sudden blood sugar going down? If you find out the reasons why in some patients the blood sugar goes down to a dangerous level, almost all of them are diabetic on medicines, and this blood sugar going to a dangerously low level is because of mismatch between diet on one side, medicines on other side, and exercise on third side. So that's why once you take a tablet, you can't control it. It will have its natural course, and as long as it is circulating in your body, you must have some feeds in between, because the tablet is reducing the blood sugar, the feeds are increasing the blood sugar. Doctor has already calculated for you that you will eat this much at this time, that will raise blood sugar to this much. I am giving you this much dose. So both the things will be neutralized and you will be having a flat thing. All that balance is gone. That's why you should not fast.
Okay. So how can vitamin D deficiency lead to diabetes and related complications?
Vitamin D deficiency is found very, very commonly in India. I will give you my personal research work, which we published 2 years back. Sure. I was a principal investigator of a pan-India study in which we studied 1,500 patients with diabetes. And we found that about 82% of them were either insufficient or deficient. For a simple layman, I would say they either had severe deficiency of vitamin D, they may be about 1/3, and remaining out of 80, the remaining 2/3 out of 80% had a mild deficiency of vitamin D. So vitamin D deficiency and diabetes go hand in hand. People have done surveys in a non-diabetic persons also, and they have found across the length and breadth of India, we suffer from vitamin D deficiency. We are talking about diabetes, so I will not go into details of why we suffer from vitamin D. Now, vitamin D has action on the beta cell in pancreas where insulin is produced, which controls the blood sugar.
Sure.
Vitamin D has a receptor and actions on the fat cell and muscle cells where glucose enters those cells and then it is utilized and spent. Some people postulate that if vitamin D deficiency is there, these actions, insulin producing action in pancreas and insulin spending action in the muscle would be. But this is a postulation. Nobody has proved a clear-cut cause and effect relationship between vitamin D deficiency and diabetes. As I said, vitamin D deficiency is common in Indians, a little bit more common in diabetics. The association is very strong. But science requires not only associations to say diabetes causes vitamin D, vitamin D deficiency causes diabetes. Science requires an additional proof of a cause and effect relationship, which is not very strong. But common sense tells us that if somebody has a vitamin D deficiency, it has to be corrected.
Sure.
So in diabetes, we would definitely correct it. But I won't say diabetes causes vitamin D deficiency.
Okay. So how does stress affect blood sugar levels?
Whenever a person is stressed out, there is a secretion of certain hormones in the body increases.
Sure.
Stress hormones. Now the blood levels of this stress hormone goes up. And one of the additional actions of this stress hormone is oppose the action of insulin. Insulin is a principal hormone which controls the blood sugar. Now, if suppose I am a person, I'm not diabetic, no matter how much stress I get, no matter how much that extra hormone, stress hormone my body generates, I will not get diabetes because my pancreas is strong enough to produce extra insulin to neutralize the anti-insulin effect of stress hormones. But your first question was, why do Indians get diabetes very commonly? And my answer was because Indians have genetic defects in pancreas. Okay. Because of that, there is a limitation. Their production capacity of increasing insulin production in need is limited. Up to 2 times normal, they may be able to produce at a certain stage. But if a body requires up to 2.5 times normal, then there is a diabetes temporarily, as long as the stress hormone is at higher level. Once the stress is controlled, the stress hormone comes down, the opposing effect of its effect on insulin will be reduced and the blood sugar will come to normal. If somebody whose pancreas is strong, somebody who doesn't have a genetic limitation on his pancreatic function will not become diabetic no matter how big is the stress. He will simply produce insulin. There are large number of sensors situated in the pancreas, in the blood, very sensitive sensors, which are picking second by second your blood sugar levels and increase the production of insulin as the blood sugar level goes up and reduce the production of insulin as the blood sugar level goes down. These sensors are perfect. But if your pancreas doesn't have a capacity to generate extra production, then you become diabetic.
Okay. So what are the chances of heart attack or a stroke associated with diabetes?
About 2 to 4 times more common as compared to non-diabetic.
Okay, so my last question to you. What is gestational diabetes and how can pregnant ladies avoid the risk of diabetes during pregnancy?
Gestational diabetes, by definition, is diabetes diagnosed for the first time during the pregnancy.
Sure.
So somebody who is non-diabetic before the start of pregnancy becomes diabetic during the later part of pregnancy because there is a golden rule in the obstetric department that once the patient is in 6 months of pregnancy, or completes the 6 months of pregnancy, do the blood sugar again, even if she is non-diabetic, and do the blood sugar before pregnancy. So before pregnancy, blood sugar was normal. In 7th month, it is in a diabetic range. It is a gestational diabetes.
Okay.
The pakka gestational diabetes usually comes down and the blood sugar comes to normal the day the pregnancy is over. But these people, these young ladies, they are not yet patients. These young ladies are more likely to become diabetic during the later part of their life.
Okay.
Why? The reason is very simple. Why did they become diabetic during the pregnancy? Because the pregnancy hormones, which go on gradually increasing their production during the last trimester of pregnancy, also oppose the action of insulin. They create an insulin resistant state. So if you don't have genes for diabetes or some basic defect which limits your production of insulin, then your pancreas will not be able to cope up with extra demand. That extra demand will be there temporarily only as long as the pregnancy is on, because those hormones will come back to normal immediately after the pregnancy is over. So that extra demand will be removed. That's why they become normal most of the times after the pregnancy is over. But if you analyze all these young ladies, they are several times more likely to get diabetic in the middle age or some years down the line as compared to those young ladies who did not develop gestational diabetes during their pregnancy.
Okay. Thank you so much, Dr. Talwalkar. It was very insightful talking to you, and it was very interesting the way you explain it. Okay, it was lovely talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Sen.